Hello and welcome to Motorsport Speak, a motorsport podcast brought to you by Motorsport Monday and motorsportweek.com. My name's Dan Lawrence, and joining me again this week is Jack Oliver Smith. And we're here to talk about the penultimate race of the Formula One season, the Qatar Grand Prix, where the recently crowned four-time world champion Max Verstappen took victory, but not after Oscar Piastri won the sprint. So we're going to talk all about Formula One, and then we're also going to look ahead to the inaugural E-Prix of season 11 of the FIA Formula E World Championship, which will be taking place in Sao Paulo, Brazil. So a lot to get through, a lot to talk about. But first of all, Jack, how are you? And did you enjoy the Qatar Grand Prix?
Hello, Dan. I'm fine. Yes. Yeah, I really did enjoy the Grand Prix, actually. I mean, I do like the Qatar circuit. As I said last week, I did enjoy it. I expected it to be a good race. And there's plenty of subject matter which we can go through.
Yes. I must admit, as a race circuit for Formula One, Qatar looks incredible qualifying. The cars obviously at their best in the high-speed corner configurations. Some of the onboards were absolutely fantastic. But I think for racing, it does miss something if nothing happens, that is. So in the sprint, we saw a DRS train. There's the one DRS zone down the start-finish straight, which they'd made shorter for this year's race. So overtaking really came at a premium. It looked like the race was going to be a similar affair, not as exciting as the multi-class racing from the FIA World Endurance Championship, and not as exciting as motorcycle racing when MotoGP goes to Qatar. But obviously everything changed with the wing mirror coming loose from Alex Albon's Williams on lap 30, which we're going to get to in a little bit. But first, let's talk about the main man of the event, Max Verstappen, taking his first win in the dry, first Grand Prix win in the dry since the Spanish Grand Prix in June, which sounds crazy when you think about it. The fact that he's won the championship is unbelievable. And it's even more crazy if you consider the turnaround, given the fact he was 8th in the sprint with seemingly no pace in the Red Bull. But luckily, the Parc Fermé regulations means you can make changes between the sprint and qualifying. And Red Bull did. They made some changes to the RB20, made it lower. Red Bull tend to not run their car as low as the opposition. That's a trend that's sort of followed them for many, many years. But they did that, and it unlocked some performance when Max Verstappen sort of got pole, but then didn't get pole. Again, we'll come on to that. But just a remarkable turnaround, wasn't it, really, from Verstappen? And he kind of showed everybody again who's boss.
Yeah, he just, every time you think he's down to some extent, he keeps coming back, and that is the sign of a truly great driver. I think there was probably the sort of feeling in the last couple of years is how good is he really, because that car is so competitive. But I think that this year we've proved that, he's proved that he's a thoroughly remarkable talent. And yeah, the tweaks from the team seem to work. Obviously, as usual, didn't really work for Checo, but it worked for Max. And yeah, every time you think Red Bull are just, you keep finding chinks in their armor, he somehow manages to find something in that car, and so do they, in order for him to scamper off into the distance.
Yeah, I mean, we thought that McLaren coming into the event were really going to be the team to beat. And in the sprint, they did look like the team to beat. Obviously, Lando Norris was able to give that little swap at the end to give Piastri the victory, repaying the favour from Sao Paulo. But yeah, as you say as well, Checo's side of the garage, it didn't go well. He had that spin underneath one of the safety car periods. And I think and also in the sprint, the pit lane start, the green light, green means go, but Checo was caught napping and overtaken in the pit lane exit by Franco Colapinto at the start of the sprint. So really another sort of worrying weekend for Checo Perez. And Christian Horner's even said, I think it's up to the Mexican to decide his future. I think they're trying to nudge him into retirement. And there's actually some interesting movement there as well. Given Colapinto's recent run of crashes, it really looks like he's out of the running. And sort of the way things are moving, it still looks like Liam Lawson might get that seat alongside Max Verstappen. Yuki will be stuck in RB purgatory, which seems to be unwarranted given the Japanese driver's run of results. And it looks like Isaac Hadjar, the Formula 2 title contender, is going to be given the promotion. Is he ready maybe not. And one thing you can guarantee is that Max Verstappen will be leading coming into turn one at lights out, and that's exactly what transpired in Qatar. But there was a little bit of needle around that whole situation, given his one-place grid drop from taking pole initially in Saturday's qualifying. George Russell inheriting pole as a result. Verstappen, slowing down on his cool-down lap, didn't want to speed up and impede people in front of him. He ended up impeding George Russell behind him, and then it was called to the stewards, giving the Dutchman a one-place grid drop, which is a bit unprecedented given that nobody was on a timed lap. Verstappen apparently had a bit of a confrontation with Russell straight after the hearing and said, "I hope you and your friends at the FIA are happy." Ted Kravitz of Sky Sports F1 said there may have been some colourful language thrown in there as well. Verstappen told Russell, "I'm beating you into turn one." That's exactly what happened. And then after the race, there were some sensational comments from the Dutchman, essentially calling Russell two-faced. It was some extraordinary accusations saying that Russell is I think he told Dutch TV that he's nice in front of the cameras. He's a completely different person behind closed doors. In the press conference, he said it was like talking to a brick wall, and he's never seen someone campaign so hard against him in a steward's hearing to get him a penalty, and he lost all respect for Russell. So a really interesting sort of confrontation there. As you can hear the chirps of my cat in the background, who's obviously got some opinions of his own, but we're going to try and ignore those. What are your opinions, Jack, on the whole spat?
Well, you have to kind of look firstly at the fact that we know what Max is like. He's quite outspoken about lots of things, and he has his own viewpoint on all of them. But is it fair to say that maybe George, George is he's a very good face in front of the camera. He's always going to say the right things. But it opens up the question: how calculating is he when those cameras aren't running? We of course, a lot of, if you looked at social media in the days after the GPDA statement was put out, in rebuke of the change to the rules on language, a lot of people questioned whether George Russell had any say in how that was worded, and if so, it showed a different side to him. So there is that aspect you can question. But yes, it was a very strange penalty to give out. But I think we will touch on that at some point, and I've got more to say on it, so I'll save that. But it just opens up another sort of tiff that Max can have with the driver, and of course that makes for good drama when the cars aren't even running.
Yes, and it should hopefully make for good drama with Netflix, because apparently they did catch the argument after the stewards hearing. So that's going to be, I guess, in episode 9. I'm assuming of we never know because they sort of cross cut around the whole season, so we never know where or the amount of stuff that Netflix covers, which is a completely different topic and probably a whole podcast episode, isn't it? The amount of footage they get, it could end up on the cutting room floor, but I think it might end up in an episode. But it's good. And the way I see it is Max Verstappen always has this sort of Michael Jordan-esque mentality, if you want to use an NBA analogy. Michael Jordan was the best basketball player of his generation, winning titles every time he got an opportunity, similar to Max Verstappen. He's the best driver of his generation, winning titles. And he had interesting sources of motivation. He would conjure up conflicts when they weren't needed. The slightest comment, he would use that as fuel. And you think, did he really need that? And it's the same with Verstappen. They were saying, like Christian Horner was saying on the grid, he's fired up and everything like that. He's just using all this as fuel. So that's quite exciting. And it's always interesting to have a bit of a conflict and a bit of debate there. But moving on. Verstappen did have a challenger, and it wasn't George Russell in Qatar. It was Lando Norris, which is, kind of symbolic of the entire 2024 campaign, because Norris got the jump on Russell at turn 1 at the start as well. But that pesky wing mirror that we have mentioned that came loose on lap 30, that changed the race entirely. Race direction didn't put out a safety car or a VSC. They put out double waved yellow flags at turn 1, and Verstappen sort of shrewdly observed that Norris caught up to him a little bit too much on one particular lap because he didn't slow through that period, and he was campaigning with Gianpiero Lambiase over team radio, get it protested. And then it transpired that the stewards reviewed it and gave Lando Norris a 10-second stop-and-go penalty, which happened shortly after a restart, and it basically demoted Norris from second to the back of the field. He was able to fight through to 10th. Massive implications on the Constructors' Championship, an implication on the drivers' standings. He's now only 8 points ahead of Charles Leclerc. And I'm sorry to say this, you being a Tottenham fan, but it has shades of the Tottenham-Leicester City Premier League title battle where Tottenham came, is it third in a 2-horse race? Sorry.
Yes, thank you for reminding me.
I think that metaphor is kind of out there to be said. Low-hanging fruit, perhaps. The FIA said that the penalty was in accordance to guidelines that were issued in February. Andreas Stella, McLaren team principal, says it needs reviewing. They also don't think that Norris could have won anyway without the penalty. Do you think the penalty was fair? Or do you think it was a bit harsh?
I think it was a bit harsh. You don't really get many 10-second stop-go penalties dished out these days for a lot of things. They were phased out. They were phased out a lot compared to how they used to be dished out probably about 15, 20 years ago. So to see one given for this did seem a little bit extreme. And again, it just throws up more and more uncertainty in the whole aspect of the FIA, the rule book, the direction of it all. That's race direction and otherwise. So yeah, I would say it was an incredibly harsh decision.
I would agree. I think exacerbating it was the fact that it was shortly after a safety car restart, so the field was bunched up. So that, I think, had a play on it. But in terms of also the wing mirror, and we're talking about race direction, and I think that was a topic of a lot of debate, given that it was the second race of the new race director, who was also doing triple duty because his replacement at junior Formula level was fired before even taking up the reins. So Rui Marquez was doing F1, he was doing F2, he was doing F1 Academy. There was, with the wing mirror, it was several laps until a safety car was called. Obviously, Valtteri Bottas ended up running over the wing mirror. Debris went everywhere. Then there was punctures for Hamilton and Sainz, which I think we can put 2 and 2 together and assume that the debris may have had a point in it. There was obviously excessive tyre wear. So I think it may have been a perfect sort of blend of debris, tyre wear. And then the safety car was called, and people were like, surely shouldn't the safety car have been called the minute the wing mirror came out? I think Oscar Piastri said as much in the post-race press conference. Again, the FIA said this was in accordance with standard procedure. They are willing to review it, though. So I think that's good. It's a tricky one. I feel like Oscar Piastri said, if you'd have just had 30 laps of them running through double wave yellows, waiting for someone to hit it, is that a bit silly or not? You could argue double wave yellows cover it, and then you're not really meant to be going offline anyway and overtaking people. But I would say, and I wonder if you would agree with me, that upon review, the FIA race direction may tweak the standard procedure in that situation and go, you know what, if that happens, let's throw out at least a VSC.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that is surely the most logical and sensible thing to do. We've seen it on other occasions. You know, if there's a piece of car hanging around in the road, then it's going to be got rid of. Just the fact that it was a wing mirror doesn't seem to make any difference as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, I think. Yeah, a small object, but then obviously it did sort of. Luckily, for the neutral viewers watching the race, what was quite a boring race then became a very, very exciting race. So we've at least got that to thank. One person who won't be thankful for being in Qatar was Lewis Hamilton. Probably the other side of the coin of Max Verstappen's great weekend, or at least great Sunday. Hamilton had probably, I think it's fair to say, his worst weekend of the season. It was really not what we expect from a 7-time world champion. Or is it? Because him and this car just haven't gelled, have they? Sprint qualifying, he was 7th, 4 tenths down on George Russell, who qualified 2nd, finished 6th in the sprint. 6th in Grand Prix qualifying, half a second down on George Russell, his teammate. And then after a false start, which of course caused a time penalty, a puncture, and then a drive-through for speeding on pit lane entry, threatening to quit the race before Peter Bonington convinced him not to. He wound it up 12th. We had some interesting comments from Lewis after, I think, sprint qualifying. I'm definitely not fast anymore. And then reflecting a little bit on the weekend, saying, I'm just trying to be grateful for the fact that I've got this as a job. It's kind of sad to see a driver of this sort of caliber having a weekend like this. I think it's also worrying potentially I don't think it's worrying to Fred Vasseur, because I think he knows, and I think we know as well, being sort of reporting on F1, you saw in Silverstone when car, man and machine are aligned, Hamilton comes alive. So we got to hope he likes the Ferrari next year. But maybe the Tifosi could be slightly concerned from his Qatar weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I think Lewis has a history of doing this. He's quite reactionary, which I don't think people pick up on as much as others do. He's quite reactionary. He does say things in the pen when things aren't going well. And then it either gets retracted or it just gets forgotten about. As I touched on last week, he's mentally checked out of Mercedes quite a long time ago. And the fact that you've got someone of his standard wanting to just box the car when there's nothing wrong with it, so to speak, does speak volumes. But you just know the way he is, he's going to be more motivated once he gets to Ferrari anyway. And I think that the case will be that Charles will be more worried about him than he will be of Charles. So I generally take much of what Lewis says in these instances with a pinch of salt, frankly.
Yeah, and one thing that dawned on me is it was quite similar to how Lando Norris behaves. In terms of Lando Norris is very self-critical, very down on himself when he makes mistakes. He was like that in Qatar after doing the speeding through the double waved yellows. He basically said it was on me, it was my mistake, and he was very down on himself. So yeah, I think they're quite similar in that respect. And we say, yeah, Lewis is mentally checked out perhaps. But Vegas, I mean, the round before, mistake in qualifying, but 10th to 2nd in the race, I think, proving that there's still that ability there. So really interesting to see how his sign-off of Mercedes goes this weekend. I think he's really, as you say, he's really looking to be in that scarlet red. There was some great pictures in Qatar of him looking at the Ferrari garage, and you can see that it must be difficult, a 24 race season. He's known the whole time that he's going to be joining Ferrari next year, the most storied team in F1 history. So it will be interesting to see how Abu Dhabi goes for him. And I think from pre-season, I think the minute the season launches, Abu Dhabi puts that red on for the first time, I think you're going to see a very different mood from Hamilton. Talking of different moods, the mood in the Sauber camp changed dramatically because they finally got points. 8th for Zhou Guan Yu. And since they introduced the upgraded package in Vegas, they introduced a lot of upgrades there, or completed an upgrade package, so it were. They have actually looked genuinely quite good in terms of where they were. And Zhou's been a lot more comfortable. I think Sauber's poor pace throughout the season, Valtteri has obviously been able to cope with it a little bit better, whereas Zhou has just been completely out of sorts with the car. He said it multiple times. He's just not been comfortable. Now he's comfortable, and it's a shame that he's obviously going to not be on the grid next year, because he's showing he's actually got a bit of spark about him, and that 8th place for him I thought was incredible and really lovely to see.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's strange it would have been strange to have not seen him score a point, because I'm not sure they've ever done that. Someone can pick me up on that, but I don't think Sauber have ever got a season without scoring points at some stage. So yeah, it was nice to see them actually pick something up, get some reward for the effort they put in, and it was nice to see Zhou actually get it together with the car. It's funny, it does create a whole new narrative that, actually maybe he's good enough to stay in Formula One. He's quite good after all. And it's like, well, no one was saying that when the car was appalling, because you just can't, sometimes a driver just can't make the best of a bad situation, and that's not besmirching him. It's just the way some drivers are. But yes, it was nice to see him make the most of what they were able to produce, and it'll be interesting to see whether that sways Fred in any way to potentially take him on as a reserve driver at Ferrari, if those rumours are to be believed.
Well, Fred Vasseur is very good at dodging those questions. So I think it's unsure at this time. I think Zhou wants to stay in the paddock in a reserve driver capacity. I mean, Ferrari would be a very good place because there's potentially a drive in World Endurance Championship that could be tied with it. Robert Schwartzman's vacated a role there within the Ferrari setup to go to do IndyCar with Prema. So there's a seat open, and at least VA, of course, a hypercar. So that's not a bad blend of duties, is it? F1 reserve and World Endurance Championship hypercar driver. Who knows? Fred Vasseur's not biting on those questions. They are just rumours, but hopefully we'll find out soon. And soon, leading in to Abu Dhabi, we will find out who are the Formula One Constructors Champions, which we talked about on the last podcast episode, probably giving the edge to McLaren. They've still got favour in that title battle, but it's come down a little bit, 21 points over Ferrari, given that Charles Leclerc was able to rise to second amid the Qatar chaos. Sainz was able to somehow get a puncture and still finish sixth. Norris obviously being demoted to 10th. So Ferrari gained some ground. Charles Leclerc has basically said that Ferrari need to go out and do a 1-2 in Abu Dhabi. Oscar Piastri's predicted it's going to be close. He thinks Ferrari will fare better in Abu Dhabi than they did in Qatar. It's interesting. I think we'll need some crazy intervention again if Ferrari are going to pull it off. But it's looking like it's going to be really, really close.
Oh, yeah. And I think you have to give credit to Charles and Carlos on Sunday, because they managed to pull something out of the bag when that car was not the second fastest by any stretch. So if they bring that sort of A game to Abu Dhabi, anything is possible. But if the McLaren is having the edge, which we expect it to, I think they will just about sneak it. But it will be very interesting. We know what Abu Dhabi's like. It can throw all sorts of things up. Hopefully, though, it won't be decided on some dodgy race control decisions like any other championship has been in Abu Dhabi.
Yes, I mean, yeah, we can only hope that won't be the case. But it is set up to be a really intriguing contest, actually. And as you say, Charles and Carlos did a great job. They knew that Qatar was going to be tough, yet they came away having gained points on McLaren. And I think that's sort of symbolic of Ferrari under Fred Vasseur. They're sort of, they don't succumb to pressure too much anymore. There's far less mistakes than the previous era of Ferrari. And you look at that period from when they introduced the upgrade in Spain, where the car all of a sudden just started bouncing, and they managed to ride the tricky sort of turbulent waves of fixing those upgrades and still get into a constructors title fight by the time they fixed the car and started really doing well. So really incredible to see what they've done. I think for McLaren, they have to win the constructors title after missing out on the drivers title. And they've set constructors as their goal, I think, way back when in the early summer months. So I think if they don't get it over the line, if somehow that sort of comes undone for them, it really could be, you could consider the season a failure. Again, Norris, if he doesn't get that, I mean, I don't think Norris and Leclerc particularly care who comes second or third in the driver's standings, because neither of them have come first, and that's what's important. But I think for Norris, it will probably sting if Leclerc somehow gets that 8-point jump on him. Again, like last week, the constructors' battle, we weren't just talking about P1, we were also talking about P6. And those pesky Alpines managed to get another stroke of luck with race stoppages or restarts or what have you. It was looking good for Haas. Kevin Magnussen was leading his Alpine and RB rivals until the safety car came in, and it timed perfectly for Pierre Gasly, who was able to then take 5th place and keep Carlos Sainz at bay for the remainder of the race, which was incredible. So it's now Alpine 59 points, Haas 54 points, and I think we could safely say RB are probably out of it in case something crazy happens. RB are on 46 points. I think we said on balance it'd be fairer if Haas won. They're going to have to, I think, Alpine, they need to score, and Alpine to fail to score, but it's a 5-point margin. Hard for teams to pick up 5 points if you're not one of the top 4 outfits. But with Alpine, a strange decision, or maybe outwardly strange, is that Esteban Ocon isn't going to be racing. The team and him have agreed to part ways before the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, and Jack Doohan's making his his 2025 debut a little bit earlier than imagined. It's going to be really difficult for Doohan. I don't think he'll have the pace that Ocon has, so that could hinder Alpine. But at the moment, it's been Gasly scoring all the points anyway. Do you see Alpine now just getting this one over the line?
Again, it's probably going to be something that could get decided on race stoppages. That's how Alpine have got the advantage, because they benefited well from it. If we're talking all-out pace, you would imagine that Haas are just about going to sneak it. So it's very, very close. But for Alpine to have a rookie helping them this weekend is going to be very interesting to see how quickly Doohan can hit the ground running. I think as far as Ocon is concerned, again, to some extent, he's probably mentally checked out of the team because he's seen a team that's to some extent been based around him. He's witnessed it in the space of a very short space of time, start to be based around Gasly. And I suspect that's probably stung a bit. So I suspect he probably cares very little. And he also wanted to get the test time in after the race with Haas. So as far as he's concerned, I doubt he cares none about it. But yeah, if we're talking all out pace, I think maybe K-Mag and Nico will just about get it over the line, just on their experience and the performance of the car.
You say that, but Gasly's been very, very quick in the hands of that upgraded Alpine. And that, I think, has a little bit to play in the Ocon decision process, because Ocon's had this sort of conspiracy where he's thinking that something's up with his car. Alpine have denied that. And then I think what was originally just an agreement to let him do the test with Haas, because obviously he's signing his multi-year contract with them starting from next season. Flavio and Alpine, I think, amended that slightly, saying, well, if you want to do the test, you're not doing the Grand Prix. And I think he probably just readily accepted it. It's a really strange situation. I don't think it's a weird one, but it'd be interesting. I guess he's going to be wearing a Haas t-shirt potentially, or maybe civilian clothes, but he's going to be in the Haas hospitality, having already said goodbye to Alpine and his team there in Qatar. And odd, but I think good for Doohan to get a little bit of an early gauge as well. It's going to be just an extended test session for him. I don't think it maybe puts more pressure on Gasly, because he's going to be fighting, as you say, he's going to be fighting Magnussen and Hulkenberg, who are both performing really well recently. So it's going to be a tricky one. But I think that neatly wraps up all our race-based discussions. A couple of off-track bits of news that emerged from Qatar. First, the Audi F1 project. They still haven't even completed their originally planned 100% takeover of Sauber, but they've already got an investor to help that stake be reduced. So the Qatar Investment Authority are going to be taking a minority stake in the Audi F1 project when it gets up and running in 2026. Curious, the Qatar Investment Authority is the third largest shareholder in the Volkswagen Group, Audi's parent company. So there's already a tie there. The instigators of the Audi F1 project are no longer part of Audi. The CEO, Gernot Dollner, isn't that fond on it, but I think higher ups at Volkswagen Group are keen for the F1 project to be a success. And I think this is similar to the Mercedes model, whereas Mercedes own a third of their team, Ineos own another third, Toto Wolff owns another third. So it's quite a sensible idea, I think, to get that cash injection from Qatar. Were you surprised to see the announcement? What do you think it means for Audi? Is it already a sign of cold feet, or is it just a sign of sort of shrewd business acumen?
Well, I was slightly bewildered by the fact that they chose to announce it straight after FP1. I thought that was that was the very strange thing. But I guess you kind of have to look at without wanting to kind of veer away too much from F1. I guess Audi are probably looking at economics and all of that sort of thing to maybe look at additional support. But I think, whatever it is, it does seem a little bit strange. And on the face of it, probably does look a bit like cold feet, which would be a shame really for the likes of us and fans that are actually quite looking forward to seeing that brand take to the grid. But if it helps everything run along then let's hopefully it makes good of the situation and doesn't make too much of a difference when they actually finally line up.
Yes, and who knows what they're going to be called? Are they going to be just called Audi, or is it going to be Audi Qatar, like something or other? She's got obviously Mercedes AMG Petronas. It's not unknown for a team to have a mixed name, so maybe it'll be Qatar Airways or something. I don't know, but yeah, I think it's a blend. Obviously, there's the Volkswagen Group's having its problems in the automotive side of things anyway, shutting factories, potential layoffs of tens of thousands of staff in Europe. So it's good to have, as you say, that extra investment. It's not cheap to be in Formula One these days, especially if you're lifting a team that's only just scored points, trying to make them an outfit worthy of a name like Audi. And then if it all doesn't go to plan, you've kind of got a buyer there ready and waiting to completely consume the project. So it'd be interesting to see how that plays out. And I guess for now, it's a similar thing to the Mercedes arrangement. One more thing of F1 news that I thought was curious. Autosport and Motorsport.com did an interview with Mohammed Ben Sulayem, the much talked about FIA president, who likes to say a word or two that creates interest, intrigue, and maybe even conflict. He was asked to respond to drivers' queries of his management of the governing body, essentially. The F1 drivers have asked for transparency, communication, collaboration with the president. And in his interview with Autosport, Motorsport.com, he basically said that how he runs the governing body is none of their business, among other things, which is sort of, I guess, interesting. He has a combative nature with the press in times. And also, it's an interesting dynamic between him and the drivers, which probably hasn't been helped by these comments.
No, and when it gets to a certain stage when the organisation's hemorrhaging key staff and it destabilises the things like race control, when you've got different race directors taking on secondary duties, going back to their old duties and supplementing what they have now been assigned to do, doesn't it become their business? Surely. It seems to me that this is the stewardship of someone it just has not run smoothly compared to what we've seen in the past. You always had run-ins with presidents. Max Mosley had his fair share of them. Jean-Tar, I'm pretty sure, had his fair share of them. It's always going to happen, but this seems to be on a level that we've not seen before. Obviously, we had them with Balestra as well, obviously with the likes of Senna. They were at loggerheads most of the time, and accusations that he was favouring Alain Prost and all that sort of stuff. But it just seems a blanket mutual kind of mistrust and almost dislike between the drivers and the president, and also the president and a lot of people in the organisation. Hence why a lot of them have either been fired or have left. So it seems it's good. It's good news for us because it gives us something to talk about. But it does seem incredibly bizarre that this keeps happening and this trend is being followed, and it does make one question how long he's going to be able to keep himself in that role.
Yeah, it's interesting. I haven't seen too much talk about people going up against him for re-election, so it'll be interesting to see. It might be the fact that we get another tenure from him, but he's right in saying that how he runs the FIA isn't technically anybody else's business. He's the president; it's his job. Like, there's nobody really to tell him what to do. But at the same time, the way he responded in this interview, there's a more amicable way to talk about it. And maybe he should be reaching out to the drivers and just having consultations. As you say, it gives us something to talk about. There has been this sort of needle and conflict, not only between the drivers and the FIA, but also between, Formula One. It's growing in stature. It's growing in, I guess, commercial power. Money is power. FIA are the rule makers of the sport, but the commercial rights holders, they're sort of custodians of it. So there's a lot of needle there. Obviously, you've got Concord agreements coming up, and it's interesting to see how all the chips will lay down. But enough on F1. Let's tie a bow on that, because we've got something else to look forward to. And obviously yourself, particularly being our Formula E editor at Motorsport Monday and Motorsport Week, it's the beginning of season 11 of the FIA Formula E World Championship proper, with the opening E-Prix in Sao Paulo this coming weekend. You'll be in the paddock, which is exciting. I think it's Gen 3 Evo, so we've got more power, we've got four-wheel drive, we've got some new drivers, we've got new teams, we've had drivers change teams. There's a lot to sort of sink our teeth into. We've got free-to-air TV back for UK viewers on ITV, which is great news. I mean, yeah, take us through sort of what can we expect from Sao Paulo and season 11 of Formula E in general.
Well, I think it's going to be, I mean, by its nature, it's a very unpredictable series. But within that, there is always, in the last couple of seasons, there has been some sense of status quo in that the more likely victors are going to be Porsche or Jaguar. We saw it in season 9. It was their customers that were the ones that won both championships. We saw then the works teams do it last time. It's whether they're going to have much challenges, many challenges. Nissan are quietly confident that they are going to be able to be firmly in the mix. They, of course, had a season 10 in which they did not expect to do very much and did a hell of a lot more. DS Penske have a first season with Phil Charles, the man regarded as Formula E's answer to Adrian Newey. They have their first full season with him firmly overseeing things. So they could be firmly in the mix as well. Obviously, Andretti, who were provided Jake Dennis with a championship-winning car in season 9, need to try and get back on an even footing to have a car that's able to challenge more consistently. And then, yes, of course, you've got new teams. You've got Kiro, which were formerly ERT, have Dan Ticktum back in the car. The man that Kiro described in their press release yesterday as it was phrased along the lines of, it's been said that he is Britain's best racing driver outside of Formula One, which puts quite a lot of pressure on him.
Yeah.
And that's actually something I actually want to throw that one back to you in a second. Of course, we've got the Lola name back, which for a motorsport anorak is hugely exciting to see that name actually back in top level motorsport for the first time in such a long time. And yes, importantly for fan engagement and for people who are maybe more indifferent to Formula E, they have the opportunity for it to be back on free-to-air television. And it seems, from what I gather from the press release, that ITV may be taking it a bit more seriously than someone else. Now, of course, they take the world feed from the UK speaking side of things, so it'll be exactly the same as what you did get on TNT Sports and what you'll continue to get with them. But they have their own highlight show. The likes of David Coulthard and Karun Chandok are going to carry on. So I think that the production values are going to continue to be high, but with more scope for people to see it. So there's a lot to look forward to. I think it has the potential to be the most unpredictable season it's ever had. And yeah, there is plenty to consider. Pascal Wehrlein, of course, comes in with number 1 on his car. He will obviously look to keep the momentum going from his title win. Jaguar and their drivers have a lot to prove that they missed out on the Drivers' Championship. Some might say they slightly bungled it. Some might say the drivers bungled it on their own. But whatever case, they really need to challenge themselves, because Nick Cassidy and Mitch Evans have been so close so many times. And I think they're going to get fed up with being second.
Yeah, I agree. I think you watched that London E-Prix and it was sort of heartbreaking from their perspective, wasn't it? They both... The fact that Wehrlein came out as the champion was kind of a shock. I mean, not a huge shock, because obviously he was in contention, but it looked like it was going to be Jaguar's day finally with one of their drivers. So it almost feels it almost felt like last season, but now it really feels like now or never. Evans or Cassidy's going to have to do the business, and perhaps the fact that they're both in the same team, does that potentially make it harder for them because they're taking points off of each other? Who knows? But I think the ITV deal is huge, and I think what's interesting is obviously they went behind a paywall last season. A lot of fans had complaints about that, and Formula E have listened and they've struck this deal. So I'm just sort of curious, sort of the methodology behind that, and sort of how they were able. How do you see them being having to been able to do that so quickly? How did you see that coming about?
Well, I think the good thing about Formula E is it's been pretty good at listening to its fan base. Of course, they like to boast quite rightly that the fan numbers are growing and it's overtaken IndyCar and it's overtaken MotoGP globally. That's been a very big thing for them to talk about. But the fact is, whilst it is in its own way still quite niche, particularly compared to Formula One, which is recognised the world over, they do have a core fan base that are very, very opinionated, which again is because of the fact it's so niche. They have a lot to say on the things that they don't like. And Jeff Dodds, the CEO, is quite good at being able to take the criticism that sometimes gets handed to him, and he's good at listening to what they have to say. Of course, he very correctly made the point to me at the pre-season test that when a channel like TNT says, could we show Formula E, it makes you think that it's worth showing and putting behind a paywall, because if a channel like that comes to you and makes that sort of offer, they obviously feel that there's something in it. But many Formula E fans, particularly in this current climate, just could not afford to watch it. So the idea of going back on free-to-air was quite a hot button issue. They were talking to other channels. I'm pretty sure they were talking to Channel 5. That was the what I heard on the ground for quite a long time. But the ITV deal did seem to come from pretty much nowhere. I had no prior instances of this happening. All I knew is that they were going to be doing something. So I think for them to cobble this deal together in relative terms very quickly was quite impressive. And it obviously shows that their fan base is incredibly important to them. And I think it shows that going back, just to take a step backwards in that respect, shows that it can take a step forwards. And I think if it is shown correctly, it's advertised sufficiently enough, I think the numbers will shoot back up again. And I think the fan engagement numbers come the end of season 11 are going to be even higher than they were at the end of season 10.
Yes, let's certainly hope so. And I think that's a good positive note to end on. So, Jack, thank you for joining me. And listeners, viewers, thank you for joining us. And enjoy Sao Paulo when you get out there, Jack. And yes, make sure if you're watching or listening to us to like and subscribe to keep up to date on Motorsport Monday and motorsportweek.com as we report on all the action from the F1 season finale and the Formula E season opener. And also make sure to catch up with us on socials at Motorsport Week on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and even LinkedIn. But for now, thank you and goodbye.